This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Chick. So afterwards, we've had a lot of engagement with our main stakeholder, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and we've done a lot of consultations and discourse, in-country consultations in different countries, the most recent being South Africa. And we are privileged to be driving these conversations with such a major stakeholder. Just last month, we had a great event at Addis, the African Union headquarters. We participated as the only youth partners for the World Economic Development Forum. And we were in charge of the youth media zone, where we drove conversations and amplified youth voices and on what they think about the Continental Free Trade Agreement and what it means for them. So that was a key element of this campaign, being able to be in charge of communication and being able to disseminate information concerning the Continental Free Trade Area. And just this week, we have had a wonderful, amazing session in Egypt at the African Economic Conference. It just concluded African Economic Conference 2019. And we have also had good youth presentation on most of these discourse panels. And therefore, this is, you can tell, this is something that we're really passionate about, and we really desire that every youth be included and no youth be left behind. We are not just positioning youth as benefactors of this campaign, but as key drivers in the economic landscape. And therefore, the youth become important and critical to the implementation or the success thereof of the implementation of this particular campaign. Having said that, my colleague Chuks, who's the YALDA Nigeria president, will take you through the campaign itself and different elements of the campaign. Chuks, the floor is yours. Chuks, are you on? Chuks, please unmute yourself to be able to communicate with us.
Thank you so much, Achie. I briefly, but I'm all good. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Chuks, as Achie rightly said. I'll be taking us through a exciting campaign to include the youth voice across the continent and the diaspora, AfCFTA, which we've titled UMOJA, Youth Contributing to the Implementation of the AfCFTA. As you might have known, the African Free Contract Trade Area, the agreement establishing the area, has been signed by 54 African countries, and as at date has also been ratified by about 29 African countries, which is amazing. It is unprecedented in the African Union and in the history of agreements across the continent. This shows the importance of building a unified and strong economic bloc across the continent. So I'm going to be taking us through what YALDA has put in place to ensure that every youth member of YALDA, as well as every youth across the continent, is involved in ensuring that the whole arrangement works fine and as much as possible to the benefit of young Africans. Okay, my presentation line is pretty much simple and straightforward, and I believe in no time we'll be able to go through them, and then we'll also give us time to ask questions. The first part is know your campaign. We should be well equipped enough to understand what the AfCFTA is about and how we can contribute to its implementation. And that, what is the expected YALDA members, as there are certain responsibilities that we should, carry out, as well as so as YALDA members, there are certain roles and responsibilities that are expected of us, knowing fully well that if we want to contribute our voice to ensuring that the AfCFTA is implemented in a way that would benefit the youth population across the continent. We should be placed, we should place ourselves in a place where we can easily contribute to policy formulation as well as implementation. And then we're going to be looking at how we will be rewarded as YALDA members. As YALDA members, when we amplify our voice in contributing to the implementation of the AfCFTA, there are certain rewards, of course, that would flow directly from our contribution to the campaign. And then YALDA will be providing certain materials that would aid our engagement with policymakers across the continent. And we'll also be looking at the key dates and calendar for all our engagements. And then finally, be talking about the key contacts in ensuring that the campaign is efficiently and effectively implemented. So first and foremost, we need to understand what the AfCFTA is about. So briefly, I'll just take us through what the AfCFTA is about. The UMOJA campaign we will run for 2 years. We are kicking it off this year, 2019, and it will run till 2021. And we focus on how we, as young people across the continent, will ensure that we are included in the implementation of the recently enforced AfCFTA. Why is this important? It is important because when you look at the youth demographic in Africa, you realize that more than 60% of Africans are less than 24 years old, which implies that whatever arrangement is being put in place to ensure that the development of the continent is in focus, the youth population must be carried along, not just carried along, but our voices must be heard, and our voices must be such that it would impact the negotiations and the implementation of whatever agreement is going on the continent, which is why YALDA has taken it upon itself to work with certain partners, some of which include UNECA, AFDB, Afreximbank, and a couple of other partners, to ensure that even as we negotiate, even as we discuss issues across the continent, especially as it relates to implementing the AfCFTA, youth voices must be heard, they must take account of our contribution in the implementation of the AfCFTA. So why is the AfCFTA so important, you may ask? Now, the basic aim of the AfCFTA is to create a single African market with a combined population of more than 1 billion people and a combined gross domestic product of more than $3.4 trillion. Undoubtedly, paving way for the establishment of a unified Africa. This is particularly important because if you look at the benefits it will accrue to Africans, is immense in the sense that we've had the challenge of increased unemployment rates. With the AfCFTA, the economy will be such that it will become expanded, and as such, industries will come up, industries will spring up to satisfy the local market. And having done that, definitely the issues of unemployment will be resolved as more industries would take on young people, would employ young people, and as such, many of Africa's challenges, will become a thing of the past. But these things are gradual, which is why, as YALDA, we decided to take it upon ourselves to participate in ensuring that youth voices are accounted for, in as much as we are involved in driving the entire process that would eventually or ultimately benefit the youth population of Africa. We also said there, we want to be a part of this so we can help you, our members, easily expand your businesses to other African countries. This is also very much important because we realize that young people in business are oftentimes restricted to their respective countries. Say, for instance, an African doing business in Ethiopia, would only focus on the Ethiopian market. But leveraging the AfCFTA, young people can thereafter establish businesses across the continent. Those young business people in, let's say, Gabon, for instance, they may decide to expand their business to Botswana, to South Africa, to Malawi, to Kenya, to any part of the continent, leveraging the AfCFTA. It will also help you get investment capital from investors across the continent, and or volunteer, intern, or work in other African countries other than your own. It is important that Africans take this upon themselves, in that we should not just be restricted to our immediate country. I've met a couple of people, and I've had conversation with a lot of people as well, and it's so surprising that most Africans don't travel across African borders. No doubt, because we understand that traveling at that date could really be expensive, and border controls could also be exhausting. However, we should understand that for you to understand and participate in growing the continent, we need to travel. We need to travel across the continent and also understand how things operate across our borders, and not be restricted to our African border, our national borders. Now, let's quickly take a look at the objective of the campaign. The first objective of the campaign is to promote among the youth the vision of the African Union Agenda 2063, and the African Continental Free Trade Area, to build a unified Africa through free movement of persons, capital, goods, and services, in order to deepen inter-African trade. Now, to speak to this briefly, we understand that, like I said earlier, most Africans don't travel across the continent, not because they're not interested in traveling, but because of the prohibitive tariff or fare involved in traveling. There was an event I attended, the tax event I attended in Dakar, and I was speaking with some of our South African delegates, and I was made to understand that some of them coming in from South Africa, for instance, had to go to Dubai before coming to Senegal, which was insane, because this is Africa. We must try as much as possible to make things easy, not just for ourselves, but of course for people coming into the continent, to ensure that things operate efficiently and effectively. Such a trip, could have been direct. We could have had direct flight from South Africa to Dakar. Here we had many people flying that route. So under the AfCFTA, we hope to achieve this. This is hope to be achieved, as there's going to be free movement of people. People can now move freely without the need of a visa from one African country to another, of course, as well as securing investment capital. Now you can secure investment capital from any part of the continent, in as much as you fulfill you meet the investment criteria. Also, goods and services can now be traded across borders under the AfCFTA without the need of paying exorbitant tariff and taxes as it is, which would ultimately deepen inter-African trade. We'll also be looking at alleviating information asymmetry among young Africans, around trade in Africa, by facilitating the increased understanding of the AfCFTA framework and other related instruments. As at date, the AfCFTA is in highly elevated technical language that many people, even those in business, might not easily understand. What the campaign hopes to do is to ensure that the information in the AfCFTA is broken down in such that an average youth across the continent will be able to understand it, and as well as be in a better position to translate it into practice. We also intend through the campaign to demonstrate to young people how they can optimize and leverage the opportunities availed by the AfCFTA. Like I said earlier, the AfCFTA will provide young Africans, especially those doing businesses, an avenue to conduct their businesses across Africa's borders. A business person or person intending to go into business in Kenya, for instance, can do business in Gambia, in Senegal, in Mozambique, in any part of the continent, and as well as seek opportunities outside their immediate countries of residence. Also, they'll be able to expand their businesses across borders, like I've said, and attract more intra-African investment for their enterprises, and thereby contribute to creating a more lasting framework for increased job opportunities for the masses, especially unemployed youth across the continent. We also, through the campaign, will be advocating for and confirm concrete roles for the youth in implementing the vision of the African Union, like I've said, the Agenda 2063. Also, the vision of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, the Afrexim Bank, and a couple of other institutions, geared towards promoting the AfCFTA. We also intend to position YALDA to the campaign as a convener to engage key stakeholders from the public, private, civic, and multilateral spheres, and young people, in critical discussions across the ratification for those member states that are still yet to ratify. Like I said earlier, about 29 African countries have ratified, which is good, but we need to encourage other African countries to ratify likewise so that we can have a holistic implementation framework for the AfCFTA. So using the campaign, YALDA will be engaging policymakers, government officials, and all the institutions charged with implementing the AfCFTA to ensure that we have a holistic implementation agenda that is inclusive of youth voices. However, it is important that our branches highly participate in this to ensure that we optimize the opportunities that this presents. All branches are expected to actively participate in all its activities and showcase our work on social media. We've been getting quite a lot of engagement recently on social media, given our engagement at the World Export Development Forum that was held in Addis and the African Development Forum that was held in Egypt. We need to amplify this by ensuring that as we continue to engage with policymakers, we showcase our engagement on social media, as well as filing our report with the YALDA team in our respective countries and in Africa as a whole. It is equally important that we must submit reports on the campaign activities, which will be shared with us after this webinar. In our quarterly report, and also include thought-provoking insights, photos, and other interesting information in our reports, in our quarterly reports. And it's also important to note that we shall not be requesting any separate report. So our reports, our quarterly report would also include our campaign activities. Now, let's quickly take a look at areas of participation that we intend to engage YALDA in across the continent and the diaspora. The first part is breaking down information asymmetry. This is quite important because, like I've said earlier, we need to ensure that young people understand the AfCFTA in such a way that they can easily put it to practice and implement it, even in terms of growing their businesses, getting investment across the continent, or visiting other African countries. This we intend to do through competitions and challenges. Now, these competitions and challenges will revolve around preferring youth-driven solutions and inclusiveness, emphasizing how African youth can drive the AfCFTA agenda through their perspective. Now, we understand that, like I also said earlier, the AfCFTA is an elevated language fit for policymakers and those in trade sector. However, as YALDA, what we intend to do is to ensure that we make this information accessible, understandable to an average youth, so that they will be able to implement it in their daily lives and, of course, in improving their businesses and the likes. Now, what we also intend to do through the competition and challenges is to ensure that young people come up with infographics as well as essays that would speak to them, that would speak their language, that would also communicate the agenda of the AfCFTA to their peers. And what we are also expected to do as YALDA is to spread the word and enter into the competition when it is eventually announced. We've worked on a competition document which will also be shared with us, and once the competition is announced, we all get the information. Although I would also quickly chip in that the competition itself has quite a lot of rewards. We have rewards. We have monetary and non-monetary rewards. Monetary rewards in terms of cash prizes, $1,000 plus. So definitely, once we are announcing the competition, the information will be shared with us, and then we can spread the word as well as enter the competition ourselves. We also intend to have video experience, which entail members sharing their videos with us. We will produce short videos and infographics using the best content from the competitions and challenges to raise awareness and increase knowledge of the youth on the AfCFTA. Now, the video would include general interview and commentary videos focusing on young people's experiences with trade and AfCFTA in Africa. Generally, we also have overview on the AfCFTA, investment promotion, movement of people, trade of goods and services, amongst others. This is pretty much important as we intend to focus on creating video content that will speak to the youth population on how they can increase their businesses as well as contribute to youth voices in the AfCFTA. Like we're currently doing, we'll also be having specific webinars on the AfCFTA. YALDA will use our monthly webinars to provide an interactive live platform for discourse on AfCFTA. We will engage expert speakers to demystify AfCFTA concepts and debunk the myths associated with it, and facilitate exchange between the youth and these industry experts. A couple of months back, we had an expert from ITC, International Trade Center, who spoke on the AfCFTA. We'll be having regular interactions with such experts to, as much as possible, ensure that young people across the continent understand these things while interacting with the experts. And also, this would also help them in implementing the AfCFTA, as well as in ensuring that they incorporate the AfCFTA in their business plan or in their plan for business growth or expansion across the African continent. The webinar would also provide a platform that will be pivotal in harnessing your feedback, questions, and perceptions around the AfCFTA. As usual, YALDA members are expected to spread the word and have members actively participate, and as much as possible, provide feedback. We'll also be having social media engagement. We will leverage the use of social media as a tool for building social currency for the AfCFTA. Today, many might have heard about the AfCFTA, but not many have paid so much attention to how the AfCFTA would affect their businesses. As a business person in Tanzania, for instance, how can I expand my business to Kenya? How can I expand my business to Mozambique, to South Africa, to Nigeria, to Liberia, to other parts of the continent, to Egypt, to Morocco, to Algeria, to other parts of the continent? So we will be leveraging social media to ensure that young people across the continent understand how this would affect them and how they can leverage it to grow their respective businesses. The hashtag for the campaign, which would also be shared with us after now, is Youth for AfCFTA, YALDA for AfCFTA, I Buy Made in Africa, amongst others. YALDA will also circulate AfCFTA social media cards and infographics to create awareness and facilitate the understanding of the AfCFTA. We will also be engaging celebrities in ensuring that the campaign and the message is well communicated to young Africans. We understand that today, in today's world, young Africans have so many celebrity mentors that they look up to, to drive or as influencers. So we'll be engaging these influencers or celebrities to ensure that the message of the campaign and, of course, the AfCFTA is well communicated to young Africans across the continent. Also, we will be having consultations, workshops, and events. We recognize that young people need to understand and leverage the benefits that would accrue, through the AfCFTA. In this respect, it's imperative that we ensure that we undertake efforts to resolve information asymmetry that results from the lack of knowledge transfer about how the agreement will work, impact the youth, and how we may potentially benefit from it in the long term. And this we hope to achieve by engaging, players in the industry. Say, for instance, the custom union across the continent, as well as policymakers, ministries of trade, and those engaged in trade facilitation. We'll be engaging them to ensure that youth voices are not only heard, but of course, we actively participate and the message is well communicated to young people across the continent. Okay, I will quickly run through our countrywide consultation. YALDA, through the campaign as well, will be consulting widely across our respective countries. We understand that AfCFTA's implementation is going to be through the regional economic blocks, direct, sort of. We have the ECOWAS, the SADC, COMESA, and several other blocks across the continent. And it's also important that countries are engaged. We engage at the country level and at the local level to ensure that everyone is, in a way, carried along in the implementation. Currently, at the request of UNECA, we have been asked to nominate young speakers and delegates for the AfCFTA national consultations that are taking place across the continent. we've had to send representations to South Africa, to Kenya, to Ghana, to Niger, and to some other African countries. Engagements are still ongoing, and we will be sending representations to, of course, our wonderful members, either in country or where necessary across borders, to represent YALDA at these engagements and, of course, contribute to youth voices being heard and amplified at this engagement or events. We are expected to participate when we make a call for applications. Just like Achen rightly said, let me quickly draw attention to that. Achen, in opening this webinar, reiterated our participation at the last World Export Development Forum that was held in Addis. YALDA was one of the major organizers in that we literally ran the youth media zone and ensured that the events are well captured and reported online, which is a huge achievement on our part. And it's also important that we bring in more young people on board to ensure that youth voices are captured and are amplified across the continent as it relates to pushing the African agenda through the AfCFTA. Also, in line with our consultation and workshops, we will be having the Youth for AfCFTA Week, which will be coming up in April 2020, and we hope and expect all YALDA branches to incorporate this into their plan for next year. As a branch, you will be expected to participate in the YALDA-wide Youth for AfCFTA Week in your respective countries by hosting 3 distinct but equally important events. One of the events would be a key stakeholders roundtable. During the Youth for AfCFTA Week, each branch would be expected to host a key stakeholder roundtable that would include various stakeholders, actors, and participants in ensuring the implementation of the AfCFTA, including the ministers for trade, trade representatives, policymakers, and the private sector. This is to ensure that everyone engaged in the implementation of the AfCFTA is on the same page in terms of how the youth can participate as well as benefit from the AfCFTA arrangement. There would also be AfCFTA Youth Workshop, Trade 101 Youth Workshop. You'll be expected to host a seminar or workshop for youth in your country in partnership with relevant institutions. This could be trade facilitation agencies across your countries, or other institutions that promote youth participation and trade across the continent. On what the specific tenets of the AfCFTA are and how young people can leverage its provisions, which include exportation of goods, digital and other services, tariff exemption, and the likes. This would also ensure that young people are not just aware of what the AfCFTA provides, but can easily incorporate it in their business plan and, of course, to grow their business across the continent. We'll also be hosting a gala dinner. The gala dinner will be the highlight of the entire Youth for AfCFTA Week, which would also serve as a fundraising dinner to raise funds towards implementing the campaign in our respective countries. The dinner will bring together key stakeholders to celebrate the successes of the AfCFTA campaign in your respective countries, and also highlight what has been achieved as a YALDA branch in your country or in your university, as the case may be. And one of the most important events, or if not the most important event YALDA will be hosting next year, is a biennial high boot camp, international high boot camp which is scheduled to hold in South Africa in September 2020. Biennially, YALDA hosts an international iBoot camp in the city of one of YALDA's African branches. Youths from across Africa and the diaspora converge, to discuss issues on how to overcome challenges to youth leadership and Africa's development challenges. At the iBoot camp, delegates receive real-time feedback on their ideas from high-profile speakers who are experts in their field. Next year's iBoot camp will be focused on how youth across the continent can leverage the AfCFTA to grow their businesses across the continent. Call for participation would open very soon, and we expect members and non-members to apply in participating in this highly anticipated iBoot camp. So, in summary, what is expected of you as YALDA members across the continent and the diaspora is to participate in all activities of the campaign and promote it likewise. We'll also be organizing events. Members are expected to organize events and activities at your branches that will benefit other youths. Also communicate your events, activities, and success stories on social media with your local media houses and others. Also to keep in touch with the YALDA International Branch coordinators and your YALDA regional associates about all your YALDA-related questions, concerns, and achievements. Also, we are expected to engage on all your branch social media platforms and YALDA International Branch platforms as well. Most importantly, we are expected to report our activities on our respective platforms, and most importantly, report on the activities on our quarterly reports. Also, we are expected to give feedback on what we've done so far in terms of the campaign activities and how we can improve it. Definitely, there are rewards for implementing the campaign. The creative efforts invested to make this campaign possible in our respective branches will not go unrewarded. YALDA branches that successfully organize events, as well as that are able to publicize the events, will be highly rewarded. This will be through several means, which will be discussed shortly. So there are exciting prizes. We have about prizes for the best 10 and most active branches. They would get small grants to organize local or national events to sensitize their branch members as well as youth across their vicinity or locality on the AfCFTA. YALDA reward diligent and successful branch fundraising as well. We will match these funds raised by 5 branches that are able to raise funds to implement their campaign. Say, for instance, if a branch is able to raise $200, YALDA would match such contribution with an additional $200. Our campaign branches will be highlighted in our quarterly newsletter and publications, and international websites, as well as all our social media pages. 5 members from the top performing branches will be fully funded to participate at the iBoot camp, which is an exciting opportunity to not only listen to or participate and generate ideas, but also have your idea funded to either implement your idea or scale your business across the continent. Although the reward earlier discussed pertains to branches, We also have rewards for individual members. YALDA members with proven contribution to actively participate in and popularize the campaign would get YALDA International Recognition Awards. Top performers in terms of individual contribution will get the exclusive offer to get featured in UNECA's official video. They will also get guaranteed invitations to exclusive events where they will get the honor of meeting people of influence and celebrities. One of these being one of our partners, Afreximbank, in the Inter-African Trade Show that will be taking place in Rwanda in 2020, and many other events. Also, top performers will also enjoy fully funded participation at the iBootcamp, as earlier discussed. So these are exciting opportunities that we can leverage on as YALDA members, as well as youth across the continent, to ensure that youth voices are not only heard but actively taken account of in implementing the AfCFTA. Now, I'll hand over to Achieng to quickly talk about what YALDA will be providing to the branches and, of course, to our members. Achieng, over to you.
Thank you, Chooks. As you can already see from the presentation that Chooks has just made, this is a very major campaign in its scope and magnitude. So the question on your mind is, how do we make this happen? How do we actualize the objectives of this campaign? As you can see also is that the campaign has two dimensions, both online and offline. So this is how we will facilitate you to make this campaign a reality and to achieve the end gains. We will provide communication tools, which are the tools that you will use to drive this campaign at branch level. So we'll start by talking about the press kits. The press kits will be disseminated to branches to provide information on the background. It will also delineate the milestones achieved. It is important to understand where we are coming from and where we are going. So that dimension and that holistic perspective will also be presented in the press kits. We'll also have it will also outline there for the benefits and opportunities, like Chooks has talked about. He's talked about competitions and the rewards. So these will also be amplified in these press kits that we will send to you. The information that will also be born in these press kits is information concerning the campaign launch, the creative competition launch, the AfCFTA week launch that Chooks has already alluded to, and the iBootcamp registration. The details of this particular events, milestone events for this campaign, will be in the press kits. The next tool that I want to talk about is the campaign brief. The next slide, please, Chooks, is the campaign brief and fact sheet. Chooks, please put in the next slide. Hello, Chooks, can you hear me? If you can hear me, please just slide on to the next item on this presentation. As he tries to figure that out, I will say that hopefully you understand why we're running this campaign. So these tools will actually provide the who, what, when, where, and how, because we know why we're running this campaign. It is to amplify youth voices and promote inclusivity in the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. So who does what, when, where, and how will be delineated in this campaign. So I seem to have a challenge. I can't get Chooks to change onto the next slides. Chooks, can you hear me? So I think I will just go on, and then probably he will catch on if he's not already here. The next campaign item tool that I will talk about is the campaign brief and the fact sheet. What the campaign brief and the fact sheet will do is to outline the campaign workflow. We want to know what he has talked about a lot of activities. A lot of activities have been presented by Chooks, but what is the sequence of these activities and what are the timelines? So the campaign workflow will be presented in the campaign brief. We will also have the specific activities that branches are supposed to participate in, and it will also provide information on the CFTA. Of course, like has already been mentioned, the CFTA has a lot of technical jargon that may not be clear to all of us who do not necessarily come from an economics or finance background. So the information concerning the CFTA, the particular terminology that is easy to understand for the youth, will be presented in this campaign brief and fact sheet. Next, I would want to talk about the AfCFTA and African game quizzes and content. So this is one of the very exciting offline campaigns that you'll have the opportunity to carry out at your branches, but there is an online dimension to it. So the exciting activity is aimed at sharing information to promote understanding, and in a very easy manner that exposes all youth to this information. We will use quizzes, which are very engaging and easy to understand. So we will use quizzes both online and offline, and these are activities that branches will be expected to participate and carry out. This activity will also drive engagement and discourse. So as you're carrying out your online quizzes, there will be a lot of you expected to generate, at least it is our hope that you generate a lot of engagement and discourse because of the dynamic of these particular activities. So how will we actualize this idea, this Africa game quizzes and content? How do we make it happen? We'll have online and offline engagement. Like I've said, we'll do this online where you will throw quizzes to your members on your Facebook platforms. I think the emphasis cannot be enough that you need to share the information on your online platforms. So on your Facebook handle, on your Twitter handle, on Instagram, you can present this information in a very fun way that draws in everybody and causes them to engage with content. We'll also have offline engagement. You guys can have forums at your branches where you have quizzes and award gifts to people who manage the quizzes. We'll also have online games and trivia, which is very interesting. We'll have offline branch events, like has been alluded to, the consultations that we'll be carrying out in your country. So this will be a dynamic of the activities that you will be doing at your branches. And then we'll also have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism to gauge understanding. It is important that we measure progress made for each of these activities. Have we been successful? What scale of success have we achieved in driving this campaign? So the part of the tools that we will be giving you will involve a lot of monitoring and evaluation just to see the progress that we're making. Then the last thing that I will talk about is the Youth for CFTA Week templates. And this particular tool will direct the implementation of activities at branch level. It is very important that you have these activities at branch level, and this is the tool, the critical tool that you will use to implement and execute the activities that we're talking about. And it will also have a monitoring and evaluation role where you will document activities. I think the emphasis here is to document activities undertaken and their outcomes, because if we document, then it is a way of mapping out progress to see what we have been able to achieve. So this tool is very critical for branch activities, and therefore it is what will guide how you implement the activities at branch level. Let me just mention a few of these items. We have the letter to AfCFTA roundtable. We have the editable flyer for Trade 101 workshop for the youth, so you will be able to edit this as per your context. We have the registration form for youth workshop. Very important to know who is attending, the numbers. So very important critical evaluation tool. We have the support letters from partners. We have gala dinner documentation. Like Chooks has already said, we will have gala dinners. We have a draft proposal that will be very important for you. We have a sponsorship table sale letter template. A few months back, we had a training on how to raise funds for branch activities. So this is one of the tools that will aid in assisting you to raise funds for the activities that you may want to carry out at branch level. So if you just reference the previous webinar that we've had, pick out the details there, and then this is the tool that you will use. Then we'll have the keynote speaker template. If you're inviting any prominent speakers to your branches, then this would be the tool that you would want to use. And then, like I've said, a lot of monitoring and evaluation will happen. So we have the monitoring and evaluation forms for you to be able to document the progress made. Let me just emphasize that documentation is important for all of these processes. There's a saying that says if it was not documented, it doesn't exist. So as you use these tools, remember to incorporate a lot of social media just to amplify what is happening at your branches and to let the world know that this is what we're doing as much as possible. Then go on and use these tools to document whatever else is running in the backend. That will be very useful for us. Thank you, Chooks.
Thank you so much, Achem, for those. Like you rightly said, monitoring and evaluation is actually very important. So we must try as much as possible to report on all our activities, either on most importantly on our social media handle, and as well as our quarterly reports. They are actually very, very important. Like you can see, as you can see on the screen right now, is a provisional implementation timeline. We had earlier in September, we had launched the campaign, but softly, by providing some postings and likes on our social media handle and of course our partners handle. We also had the ITC WEDF event that we had last month, and of course we are having the webinar now in December. So we will revise this timeline and share the revised timeline with us. That would also capture future events. We also have quarterly reports of activities across the branches. As you can see here, we have a quarterly report due. Our quarterly report is due on the 22nd of December, and the next one is due 22nd of March, after which we have the June quarterly report, and of course the September quarterly report. So please, let's try as much as possible to report our activities on the campaign through the quarterly reports, as you can see right here on the screen. Finally, these are key contacts to talk to if you need any information on the campaign. Reading through some of the questions, if I saw someone ask whether the slides will be shared with us. Well, we will share the slide with us. Of course, more information than the slide will be shared with us to ensure that we carry out an effective and efficient campaign, across our branches. You can talk to, if you require any information, you can talk to our international branches coordinator, Bitania. Our contact is right there on your screen. You can talk to our international secretary, Rebe. His contact is right there on the screen. Then we have our regional youth associates. We have Natalie for East Africa region. We have John for West Africa region, and then we have, you can also talk to our communications and publicity chair, Sheila Achien, who just spoke about monitoring and evaluation and what the communications department will be providing for the campaign. And of course, you can always talk to me as well, and we can have a conversation on how the branches can efficiently, implement the campaign. Rather by now, you can ask us questions. If you have any questions to ask, either you can type your question in the chat box, or you can actually ask. So I'm going to mute myself now, and please, if you have any questions, kindly unmute yourself and ask. And before you ask, please introduce yourself first so that we can know who you are and the country you're speaking from.
Hi, we can hear you. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Moshutayo from Nigeria. My question is that as a social media booster team on Facebook, some people are asking me that how can they join YALDA organization? And there are some people that we are working together and they are wish to join YALDA. So I don't know how can I connect them to YALDA organization. Hello?
Thank you, Moshood, for that question. Hello, Moshood. Thank you so much for that question. Please tell them to send an email to yaldaafrica@gmail.com. I'm gonna type the email in the chat box, or you can just reach me directly.
Okay.
Or you can reach any of the contacts on your screen right now. You can send them an email.
Okay.
Let them know that this person wants to join YALDA, and I believe that they're going to connect them with the right person to talk to. And of course,
thank you.
they'll be shown the criteria for joining.
Okay, sir. Thank you. That's my question, sir.
Very well, sir. Thank you. So do we have any other question, please? Okay, Aguchukwemeka recently just asked this question. Let me read it out to us. He's asking about the YALDA video campaign that members sent in a couple of months back. He's asking for updates. I'm gonna direct this question to Achieng. Achieng, I believe Achieng is in the perfect position to provide an answer to this question. Achieng, over to you, please.
Thank you, Agu, for your question on the YALDA video campaign. Just to say that we had very exciting submissions. The video campaign was concluded. So what we'll have is another video campaign. But let me reference the video campaign that you're talking about. We did receive the videos. We have made our selection of who did well. And therefore, we will be releasing some of the submissions were really, really good, and therefore we will be considering these submissions for our other upcoming events. As you can see, as per the activity timeline presented by Mr. Chooks, there's quite a lot of activity, so we'll be reaching out with the official results having been concluded. We'll be reaching out to the winners and those who did submit exceptional videos, and we will be engaging them on how they can participate in other YALDA events connected to our campaign. So that is something we still have top of mind. We have concluded our selection, and we will be reaching out to winners. We will announce them actually. So that's not a problem. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Achieng, for that superb response. Do we have any other question? Do we have any other question?
Hello? Hello?
Please go ahead, we can hear you.
Hello, please, I'm still have another question here, sir.
Please go ahead.
My question is that I don't know whether partner can partner with another non-governmental organization. Assuming we have a non-governmental organization now that is working in Nigeria, so I don't know whether some of other members in that organization can still join YALDA. That's my question, sir.
Okay. I would like to direct that question to, let me see who is online. Okay, Achieng, can you kindly address that, please?
Let me say that YALDA we have a broad spectrum of members, and members can come from any background, whether civil society or NGOs. You can join YALDA as a member. You can join YALDA to participate within our mentorship framework that we provide for young people in Africa. You can join as a professional affiliate. So we have both from every sector. We seek to partner with people from every sector and very diverse backgrounds. So if they're joining as an individual, we have provisions for them to join as a professional affiliate, where they can contribute their expertise towards a certain subject matter that will be of interest to YALDA. If it's about having an organization as a stakeholder, yes, we do have organizations within NGO sectors, the NGO sector that are our stakeholder, and therefore they can join. I believe we can work that out from our back end. So I believe that has answered your question.
Thank you so much, Achi. And just to quickly add, I think what you can do, Moshood, is to direct them to send an email to any of these contacts, and I believe they will be appropriately guided. Do we have any other question?
Hello, Mr. Chooks.
Oh, Jawad, please introduce yourself first and then go ahead, because I know you, many others will not know you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jawad Shafil. I'm the YALDA Executive Director of Morocco in Morocco. So thank you, Mr. Chooks and team, for organizing this very specific session. We come into the end of the year. You know, it's an end of a decade also. Big challenges come in 2020 around the corner. I would like to add, like, on the thematic for the next iBoot Camp, and this, like, is it possible for us also to approach, you know, the African Union passport is coming soon, and we spoke about like mobility of entrepreneurs in Africa and the way they have to be able to travel with no visas in this. I know from my recent trip to Europe that they give it to heads of states and officials of the African Union. But is it possible, because YALDA is a special NGO with special status that deals with different Pan-African organizations, is it possible to approach them on that matter? Like, it's just symbolic and relevant for us, like within the trade, what's coming with the trade zone. Thank you, Chooks.
Thank you so much, Jawad. I don't know if Bukamu can quickly address that. Okay, let me quickly give my thoughts on this. I think it's actually a good one. We can engage the African Union, we can engage them and have conversations with them. But I believe once it is out officially, I believe we should be able to apply, and members should as well be able to get. In as much as, you know, we are Africans and we are Africans, we reside in Africa, and of course, we are citizens of the continent. We should be able to get. And I believe the African Union passport is also part of an aspect of the AfCFTA, which I believe would also go a long way once it is official and it is issued to everyone. But definitely, we're going to engage the African Union and see how well we can do in terms of, you know, getting the passport, which would ultimately eliminate any need for visas across the continent.
Just as a pilot program, you know, that's why it's important for YALDA to lead also on those levels. Just as a pilot program, how it's gonna be working, you know, because I know they're gonna issue it in 2020 if things go on time, but like maybe there is some issues. So if it's possible to do a pilot program on that matter, it'd be good. Thank you, Mr. Chooks.
Thank you so much. Like I said, we're going to engage African Union and see what can come out of it. So do we have any other question?
Hello, Chooks.
Hello. Please, can you introduce yourself first? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Hello? Okay, while we wait for him to ask his question, there are two questions I would like to read out here from the chat box. One is from Daniel Iro, who asked, there are issues of xenophobia in some African countries, South Africa and recently Ghana. How is YALDA engaging with state authorities to deal with some of these issues? I would have loved to call our YALDA representatives in South Africa and in Ghana, but unfortunately they were unable to make today's webinar. However, just to quickly address your question, Daniel, during the heat of the xenophobic incidents in South Africa, we had a webinar where we had a conversation with YALDA South Africa, and we came to understand that they are taking some good steps to engage with the government and ensure that young people are engaged and incidents of xenophobia shouldn't be, considering the fact that this is Africa, we are Africans and we are ultimately one. So issues of segregation or discrimination against fellow Africans shouldn't even arise at all on the continent. So I believe that is still ongoing, and even recently in Addis, we met with a couple of South African delegation, and then we also made to understand that they've been engaging with Nigerian government and I believe other governments as well across the continent. These issues are diplomatic issues, and as many of us may know, YALDA doesn't really delve into political issues. We try as much as possible to avoid political issues because, you know, when it comes to politics, issues usually take drastic turn. So we believe that some of these issues are diplomatic issues, and state agencies are at best, at handling these issues. What we can do, or what we've always done at YALDA, is to engage state authorities at a country level. Say, for instance, after the xenophobic incident in South Africa, YALDA South Africa engaged the South African authorities on some of these issues. So that is what we do at YALDA. The continental umbrella of YALDA doesn't really dabble into political or diplomatic issues, because we believe that they will always be resolved at high-level delegation. I hope that answers your question, Daniel. There's another question here from Ibrahim. Okay, he wants to know the procedure involving volunteer switching from one portfolio to another, or switching from communications to mentoring. I think YALDA is fluid in the sense that you can always switch from an aspect of a department that you volunteer with. You can always send an email and let your team lead know why you intend to switch teams, and I believe it will certainly be approved. It's not cast in stone. Definitely, once you indicate interest to volunteer with a particular department, you're always free to do so. But of course, it has to be well coordinated with the heads of the departments. Do we have any other question?
Mr. Chooks, I would like to add something on the point of South Africa.
Please go ahead.
I believe, like also in YALDA, we have to be careful with this government business between governments, and when the things that happen in South Africa is like a little bit big and huge. But I believe as YALDA, we have a role to play within the students community, especially like the international students, that they are like, there is like international students from African countries in South Africa or in Zambia. There is also in Morocco and this. So when there is xenophobic or like the welfare is critical for these international students, I think that's something YALDA is relevant for YALDA to get involved in, more than to take statements when things are mostly political between governments and wider community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jawad, for that contribution. Do we have any other question? Agu Chukwemeka recently asked, he said, as we have been advocating for African unity on a daily basis, have African leaders made any headway against the xenophobic attacks in some African countries against foreigners? Like I said earlier, Chukwemeka, I believe these issues have been handled. I recall that after the xenophobic incident in South Africa, the Nigerian president Muhammadu Buhari had an engagement with his South African counterpart, and there were a series of meetings even before the physical visit to South Africa. I believe those meetings must have addressed some of these issues, and I also believe as well that the African Union is doing all it can, all it could rather, to ensure that the unity of Africa is solid, is ground solid. Which would also agree with me that the AfCFTA symbolizes the resolve of African countries to not just come together to grow, but as well come together to leverage their economic potential. Believing so well that Africa is better united than divided. So I want to believe that the AfCFTA signifies or symbolizes the resolve of African leaders to not just come together, but of course foster Africa's unity. So do we have any other question? Okay, I have a question here that says, how can I go to work in other African countries leveraging the AfCFTA? You would recall that we had said, or one of the elements of the AfCFTA is a protocol on free movement of Africans, which means as an African living or residing in Ghana, I can freely work in Mozambique, I can freely work in Lesotho, I can freely work in South Africa, I can freely work in Algeria, in Gabon, in Morocco, in Egypt, in Mauritania, in any part of the continent. Now the question now is this. We understand that there is a language barrier. We have Francophone, Anglophone, and Lusophone speakers in Africa. The challenge, therefore, is this: how do we manage this issue of, language barrier, given that we all don't speak the same language? How do we manage this? Do we have anyone that wants to attempt this, or we can go through it together? Okay, let me just
Maybe
quickly.
sorry,
Okay, please,
maybe Chooks, I can just chime in and say something. Well, there's been the concerted drive to adopt a singular language in some regions, as well as there's been a lot of proactivity in as far as teaching African language in other countries is concerned. I know that South Africa has recently introduced the teaching of Swahili in their institutions. But in East Africa, I think for both for Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and to some extent Rwanda, you'd speak Swahili and at least there would be some understanding, because just borrowing from the example of the East African community as an example of a regional economic bloc that is driving towards the integration that we're talking about. It's a small subset of what the CFTA hopes to accomplish. So let me address two things: the movement of people in terms of promoting skills transfer from one region to another, and the language barrier that you're talking about. There has been tremendous effort and proactivity in some African countries to learn the language of another, such that if I went, right now, if I traveled from Kenya, I am in Kenya, if I went to Uganda or Tanzania, they would have no problem understanding a little bit of Swahili, and Rwanda also. But that's because also, if you look at East Africa as regional economic community, we have already adopted a singular passport. I do not need a visa to travel to Uganda or Tanzania or Ethiopia and Rwanda. So to some extent, I recently, let me give an experience. I recently did a booking in Rwanda for accommodation that I needed. And the person who responded to me from the other end, surprisingly, was Kenyan. So we fell into conversation and I asked, how is business in Rwanda? So apparently Rwanda is doing really well. And there is a lot of Kenyans on the other side. So that's just an example of what, a small snippet of what regional integration seeks to accomplish for the whole of Africa, not just for East Africa, but for the whole of Africa. With time, other than the concerted effort to learn, Soto or French, which is spoken by Cameroonians and the Ivorians. Other than that, it will just happen. It will come as a result of, it will be the outcome of the regional integration that you're talking about, because generally I think Africans are just so very proactive. So it will come into play, but it will be driven by the integration that we're talking about. Because now I can travel to Rwanda, it means many more Kenyans will be in Rwanda, and therefore there's that cultural influence even in terms of language. So I believe that to some extent and at some point in time, language will no longer be a major barrier that we will have to address. Perhaps maybe the thing that will be a headache is which currency will we use? But language, well, I don't think it's such a big concern that will threaten integration. Perhaps maybe economic things like currency and financial structures and whatnot.
Thank you so much, Achem, for that wonderful thoughts. Just to quickly add, one of the challenges, although we are really not delving into the AfCFTA, but just galvanizing thoughts and looking at how we can address issues when they arise in terms of the AfCFTA. There have also been questions as to the fact that language courses are pretty much expensive. Having to learn English for those from a francophone axis, having to learn English for those in anglophone, having to learn French, and of course for those in lusophone, having to learn the two languages. It's been pretty tough from those I've been able to have conversations with. We just must continue to have this conversation and see how we can address some of these germane issues. I think what we can also do as YALDA is to put our heads together, is to brainstorm and see how we can address some of these challenges. I remember at the WEDF event, one of the evenings, we were having a conversation with some of our friends, and then we understand that, or we came to realize that, maybe our language difficulty has hindered so much progress. Just maybe, because if you look at it, the fact that we cannot even communicate is a barrier in itself, which means we can't even make progress in our conversation. So as YALDA, we need to sit down and brainstorm on some of these things and come up with recommendations on how we can effectively address the issue of language barrier, especially given the fact that we're looking at creating a common market where people can travel across the continent and how they can interact better with one another. So there's a question here from Daniel. Daniel is asking, he said another issue is the fear of dumping. Does the AfCFTA address the issue of standards and fair trade? Daniel, I would say the answer is yes. Like I said earlier, I don't want to, there's a temptation to delve into the AfCFTA and start discussing it right now, but I really don't want to do that. Our focal point for today is the campaign. But just quickly address your concern, or your question rather. Yes, there are mechanisms in place in the AfCFTA that seeks to address the issue of dumping and standards. One of the annexures to the protocol on trade talks about the rules of origin to ensure that goods traded in the AfCFTA has a minimum level of local content, so to speak, in quotes, now local content, that ensures that goods sold under the AfCFTA are not imported from a third country or outside the continent. So, say for instance, if I'm going to be selling my commodity in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Gabon, I must satisfy that there's a minimum level of Nigerian content in that product, and that the product is not just imported from, say for instance, from China, and I repackage the product and I ship it up to Uganda. I must ensure that my value add here in Nigeria makes up to the quantity required under the AfCFTA before it can be qualified as, you know, an African-made commodity in quotes. So those are already provided for in the AfCFTA, and I believe during our Trade 101 class, we're going to be going through some of these things in bits to understand, to let young Africans know, especially those in business, know how they can ensure that their goods or their commodities qualify for exemption under the AfCFTA. Knowing fully well that, you know, you must have a particular level of African content, you know, the rules of origin, to ensure that, you know, goods pass through the AfCFTA corridor. Okay, Chukwemeka also has a question here. He's asking, when are we expected as YALDA members to get the YALDA certificate, given that the year has come to an end, almost come to an end? Chukwemeka, to quickly address your question, YALDA do not issue certificate to members. What we do basically is to issue letters of recommendation to you in terms of letting those we are writing to know that you are a member of YALDA and that you are a member in good standing. Do we have any other question? We will have to call it a day, right, if we don't have more questions to ask. I believe with time we will get to understand how the AfCFTA operates, given the outline of programs we'll be having under the campaign.